Hello, bratan. Okay, so you wanted to ask me a question. Drop it.
Yeah, let me create my beautiful
nice.
artwork.
That's nice.
Okay, let's be like this.
It.
Yeah.
Andrei is calling just a second. Well, алло,
Yeah, no
братан.
problem.
Алло, братан. Мы на уроке, братан. Ты будешь с нами? Или нет? Онлайн. Ты читал, и ты сказал окей.
Yeah, I'm joining.
Онлайн. Давай. Мы тебя ждем.
Yep.
Давай. Great. Sorry.
Yeah, what's actually the question? Very frequently, guys says that the mix before the mastering stage should be as close as possible to the master, like industry standard.
Yes.
When so you should see the колбаса before you start to mastering track. Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Kinda.
That it's already compressed?
Yeah. Yes. Compress so much, so it's колбаса.
Okay.
And in the same time, very frequently in the like compression like tutorials lessons, the guy says that you should not over compress like signals, like maximum -3 decibels and all this shit.
Yeah.
And what's actually the question? How I can get the колбаса if I should not over compress the signals? This image may be like actually it's useless, but I think you understand my question.
Yeah, I understand your question.
Because in the same time, all the guys says that mix should be as close to master as possible.
Да.
So it should be compressed so much as no a lot of dynamic. Yeah, it depends on tracks, but if we take like very pop, very like industry направленный track, it should be колбаса to just like that.
Yeah, I really understand your point. I really
And
understand.
and at the same time, when the guy says that not over compress things, so it's strange because like I should over compress, I should like hard limiting and very hard compression on my mix mastering stage, because my mix is really dynamic, like rich, because I do not over compress in the stage of mixing. So this is the crucial part that I don't understand about compression, about industry compression.
No, I think also that, I think that the problem there, it's not that your problem, it's not that you're not understanding something. It's, I think that the people and some of the commentaries you have heard online are not complete. Like they haven't told you the full picture of. Of course, I don't know what you have watched. I don't know what you're talking about. So I may be making a generalization that is incorrect. But when for example, let's think about it from my perspective. Like what happens to me when I tell to you don't over compress, and then what I go and what I do on my own world. I over compress. No. Like I tell you not to do it, but then I'm doing it. But that's kind of what I mean in a way. It's like when you when you explain to somebody how to drive a car, that's very different on how you drive the car.
Yeah.
Because when I explain you how to drive the car, when I will explain Sirius how to drive the car, I'll explain him how to drive like a babushka, you know. And then when Sirius starts driving the car, he would be like, "Oh, look, but I can be a bit faster." And then he's gonna start driving like Schumacher or something. So I think that in between what you're observing of online tutorials and the kalbasa that you're talking about, there is a moment when people are pushing those compressors a bit harder. And also there is something, that's one part of the question. One part of the answer is maybe they are compressing more than what you think, and that's why you have this question. But the second part of the answer, actually, I was going to cover this in another lecture that will come soon between us. Because there was a lecture about mastering that is coming down the road. And I found this video about mastering Billie Eilish. And I was paying a lot of attention to the mix, to how the mix came. and we will discuss this video in detail later. But look, like this thing that you see here, that's the mix that the...
I can see screen.
Ah, sorry, bro, I forgot. Share screen. Andreuja, we're talking about compression today, just in case you haven't figured out. Are you okay, Andreuja?
Yeah, I got it.
Все хорошо?
Yeah.
Кайф. We were here. Yeah. I don't know, like if you can see the mix right now.
Yeah, I can.
Like this is the mix how it was. Like
Yeah.
I mean, and then you see this punch here, pump up here that you see, like he pushes this thing here. This is like how he increases the gain to send it to his audio gear. So, and this is the result of the master. So I don't know, this is not a Calbasa master, kind of. Like, you see what I mean? It's very dynamic. Like, it's very, very dynamic. But it's still, I mean, when you see this tutorial fully, you will see that in a point he grabs, we will discuss this more calmly, he grabs the L2 and he just pushes it 0.9 decibels in there. And, I mean, basically, let me just rephrase this a little bit better. To get to that Calbasa, he didn't overcompress. He just used a set of different compressors. This is the best way to put it. He used a set of different compressors, and he was operating quite loudly. So the answer that I'm telling you comes in two sides. Side A, remember that example of the teaching how to drive and how we actually drive. Like, I don't drive like a babushka, and I teach how to drive like a babushka. So I think that many people are telling you don't overcompress, and then they are doing a little bit more than what they will allow you to do, because they are saying this so you don't do like stupid shit. And the second thing is that I didn't articulate it well with this example of Billie Eilish, is that sometimes saturation also like flattens clips, and there are other processes that flattens clips that are not compressors and that help you to achieve this Calbasa feeling. And maybe those masters that you're seeing that are this Calbasa style, they have like this master in particular. I was shocked, man. It has 2 inflators and 2 limiters, and actually 3 different limiters. They're doing different things, all of them, and each one of them is compressed very little, but it's like he's limiting the limited signal with another limiter, like so. Yeah, I mean, in summary, there are no rules, and the more you know how to work, the more you will break them. That's kind of what I mean. And but you will always tell to everybody, don't disrespect the rules. Did I answer your question, or?
Yeah, kinda. That what I came for me by myself, like that I should overcompress. Yeah, it's not overcompression just by compressors and just by one compressor. Yeah, you should use chain compressors, like the different compressors, the fast, the glue compressor, just one after another. And yeah, it's kind of...
Another thing, and we will talk about this today, another thing as well is to use the right type of compressor for the right type of process will also be an important part of this, you know, because I mean, compressing 3-4 decibels with the wrong compressor will create like a more brutal result, you know. But compressing 4 dBs with the right compressor could perhaps like give you a good result. I don't know. Yeah. That's kind of what I mean. All right, so today we continue. Why this slide is here? Wait, I just want to delete it. We finally, I mean, I found some forces and time, and I processed another chapter of the Jason Corey book, and the Mike Senior book, sorry. And we're gonna discuss compression. Start the discussion of compression of him. Before I go there, I tell you kind of what's gonna happen in this semester. Like I told you, we will do some post-production for cinema and TV, and we are gonna do this. I just want to kind of like finish some things that I couldn't finish in the last semester. I really want to kind of like discuss this book in full. So as soon as I finish that, we will move on. But did you have news about when your meetings with Ilya will start? Are you clear about this or not?
No.
No.
Okay, let's push Masha on this because that's really not my responsibility. My goal with Ilya is that you do some kind of freestyling sound engineer stuff. There is no plan there. I am honest with you. It's pretty much like an improvised version, you know. And all I wanted was to give you exposure to Ilya. To be honest with you, like I found an excuse to give you exposure to Ilya, because I think he's great and I think he can give a lot to your life. But this was not in the plans and stuff, and so in advance I tell you it's going to be very improvised and with the wind, you know, sometimes I will be doing live sound, recording stuff, mixing, like it's kind of like advanced audio engineering techniques. And with we will continue this more theoretical thing, discussing theory about post-production, audio, and we will go to cinema eventually, but let's finish some things that I want to finish about music. Okay, so let's see how this lecture goes. I hope it goes well. I kind of found a different way of working, and it's kind of like a new way of constructing my lectures. They will look the same, but I found like a different way of building them, so I hope it works. So we're going to discuss the concept of using compression to like, you know, to control the dynamic range. We're not going to talk about the basics. Of course, we're in another type of lecture. We're going to discuss the scenarios where compression can be useful. We're going to understand the importance of setting the correct compression ratio and threshold and all of that. Discuss the difference between different types of compressions and their compressors and their application. I, of course, know that you know those compressors, but if I tell you right now, like, tell me one fact about the variable mu compressor. Can you?
No, about variable mu, especially, I can
That's
remember.
what I mean. I mean, we discussed these things, but it's never bad to kind of like rewatch.
It was very briefly.
Yeah, and we had a very brief discussion, and today we're gonna have a longer discussion about it.
I can remember about optic, FET.
Yeah. We will talk about them again, but we will see it a little bit more pro than we saw it before.
Okay.
We will discuss like the ratio control, of course, like a little bit some things about the ratio control. We will discuss different how the fact that different types of compressors react to the same ratio differently. That's what I was meaning before, Dimitri, Bratan. Like, I mean that maybe, you know, maybe you're seeing like, hey, this guy is only compressing 4 decibels, but my sound's super squashed. So maybe he was using a FET compressor where it was needed. You know, and then that 4 dB of compression that you made, it's more artifacty than the one that the other person made because the compressor was the right one. So apply the knowledge gained to different musical scenarios, kind of, and I mean, just to see how can we use this in different musical scenarios. And overall, you should come out with a solid understanding of compression and when to use it, when not to use it, and all of that. So of course, every lecture that I have built here for you guys starts with this kind of summary. So I'm not going to read all the summary. I'm going to read the parts. This is like, I really like to do this because I mean, every slide that you open, you can see everything we have discussed in the course so far. And this is, and when I start these lectures, I only discuss the new things that we discussed last time. It was a long time ago. We had a lecture about balance. It was the last lecture, like kind of like a formal lecture that we had. And so the last things that we discussed was that mixing musical sections and instruments in order of importance avoids the common mixing like error and reveals the logic behind arrangement and mixing decisions. So I mean, it's important to kind of define a hierarchy and order of importance. We discussed that checking phase and shifts and all of that, and rotation is really important, of course, like to make sure that everything sounds great. High pass filter can be used to remove things that you don't want. And monocompatibility and bias playback and non-essential music results like needs to be kind of like taken into consideration. I'm talking about panning in this case. And yeah, like just to get a clear initial balance. And when you have that initial balance, then you can start working. By the way, I did something. I'm going to add here a couple of slides before we go. I just remember I did something a couple of days ago with the foundation, guys. It wasn't with the foundation, also with the audio engineerings. Let me just put you one slide there that I think is quite useful, and I want you to see this later. I'm not gonna watch this video or anything with you. I just want you to see it later if you want. Wait, mastering. It's this one, DPO. Yeah, and we were here. And so, talk. Yeah. Yeah, here it's kind of like, it's something that I think it was important that I want to put here for you. This video, actually, it's possible that we have seen it together, and I don't want to see it with you. It's a video about Joe Barrisi explaining how to mix drums and stuff. But I told to the students when we saw this video, what was I listening when I heard that video? And there is something really important that I think I obtained from this video, which is like pan before EQing. Like basically Joe Barrisi, his static mix is without EQs at all, and we have discussed this a lot, but I want to emphasize this again. Like when you build your first version of your mix, just pan and put your levels and don't EQ anything. And actually, one thing I want to tell you that I learned from this experience of watching this, Joe Barrisi does parallel compression before EQing. So, I mean, the reason why I put this here is because I want to emphasize two things. Your static mix is better to do it without equalization and then do parallel compression with your static mix and then EQ. That's all. That's all I wanted to say with this. It's just a little bit of a sidetrack because I read here about our balance and our first mix and I thought, oh, that this was really cool. Like, so just have a look at this later. I really recommend you to have a look at this later and to think about it. I don't want to make it a part of the lecture.
I always put EQ after compression.
EQ after compression. No, what I'm trying to say is that he creates his parallel compression chain before equalizing anything. I mean, he equalizes when already with the compressors on. I was always, even myself, I was advising to people like, hey, it's better to EQ and then after you EQ, you compress. And I'm not talking about. Sorry,
it sounds more logical. You like building the dynamics before the sound.
We can take it or leave it. It's more logical what Joe Barrisi does, you mean?
No. It's Joe Barrisi's way is more logical than the most people do, like EQing before compression.
Correct.
Because like I don't know, in my world, most of the people EQ before the compression.
Yeah, but look, in this case, guys, I'm not talking about where the EQ goes in order. I'm not talking about the pareado, like a compressor goes here, EQ goes here, or EQ goes here, compressor goes here. I'm talking about the sequence of steps. It's like
I understand.
Okay, cool, got it. Just in case, I was always like EQ and then compress, like because I was thinking like I need to have my signal ready for the compressor, kind of thing. And watching this Joe Barrisi thing, I was like, it makes a lot of sense to compress before because what you want is to not over EQ too, and so you end up over equalizing when you maybe didn't need it to. Tell me, Andruja.
But for example, when you record vocals with the preamp, you actually compress sound and then EQ it. No?
It depends. It depends, bro. I don't have a rule there. Sometimes I do it one way, sometimes I do the opposite. What I care.
I mean, the preamp, he compresses the sound, right?
Okay. Yeah. Sure. Good point. And then you EQ that after. Yeah. And then you EQ that after. I just was not thinking like that, and I changed my mind, and I wanted to tell you why. That's all. Like, I heard him, and I saw this video, and I was like, oh, and then I thought about this.
There is some discussable points that actually which EQing you use, like surgical or coloring, because
I use the combination of both.
Yeah, I mean the compression before EQ and after EQ.
Right now I'm kind of like changing my opinion about all of this, but me 1 week ago would have told you chirurgical EQ before compressor, colored EQ after compressor. That's what. But nowadays, I'm not sure anymore. I'm kind of feeling that I can just use colored EQs all the time, kind of. That's how I'm starting to feel. I mean, I will still use chirurgical EQs, but I don't have a good answer to you right now. I'm changing my position. Like, my position until 1 week ago was chirurgical EQ because I want to clean the signal before the compressor. But
Yeah, I said that it's discussable because I think no one will answer. Like the different engineers will say different things. Like I
yes,
use this after
yes.
and before.
In the end, it's like you guys are coming to university to discover the truth, and we're
Yeah.
all like, there is no truth, man. Like, we can do different. Yeah. So okay, let's go into the material I have prepared, and well, any question, just bring it on. So of course, like I mean, what it says here in this huge chunk of text is that, yeah, it's hard to compress. It's hard to understand how to use compressors. But there is something that Mike Senior says that I think is really cool, despite of the fact that this mix process is actually closely related to what faders do. The only thing that really differentiates a fader from a compressor is that the compressor can perform balance changes automatically. That's really cool. That's a really cool idea. That's why I started the lecture with it. So a compressor is like a fader that can, I mean, right now what we're going to happen is like you and I have had lectures about compression already. You and I know how to use a compressor already. And now we're going to see this like a little bit more like grown-ups having a coffee and talking about compression. So we're going to come back to many things that we already know. And we're going to also discuss things that we already know from a different angle. And some things that we'll discuss will be new. So a compressor is like a fader that can be programmed to turn down the level or to move around in real time. That's a cool way to see it, because sometimes we over glorify the role of a compressor, what a compressor is doing, and maybe to see it like that is really cool. So when you're using a compressor, you can fight against undesirable variations of the signal to keep your instruments in balance, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing to articulate it like that. We are trying to define what compression is for, and compression initially is for, I mean, I am sure, guys, that if I would have asked you before saying this sentence, what is compression is for, you would have told me to shrink the dynamic range or to manipulate the dynamic range, and you would have told me things like, not you, maybe you, but we, like producers and stuff, like, because it's cool, because it sounds cool, because it augments the thing, and these are all like artifacts of the process of compression. But it's really cool that we remember that compressors are there, so you can kind of have a static fader situation. Do you know what I mean by a static fader situation? I guess you know, but do you know what I mean?
You mean like gain staging or what?
That the faders don't move. You just don't want to be moving the faders, like. And you have a compression process. You're trying to apply the compression process so you don't have to move the faders, depending in regardless of the performance of the musician. So you see, like the compressor can clean out fader instabilities that happen after the initial balance. This is all coming from the Mike Senior book, and the reason why I care is so we see another pro telling us something, so you cannot tell like, Mama, look, Leo told me this. Like, this is another person. Like, I mean, let's involve a third person in here and try to create consensus between us three. So of course the compressor reduces the dynamic range by reducing the level of differences between light and quiet moment. That's obviously clear. And it makes it easier to find a static fader setting that works for all signals across a recording. And dude, I really happy that Mike Senior articulates it like that, because I was always thinking this book and this course that I'm giving to you, it's kind of like clearing a lot of questions that I had or misconceptions that I had in the past, and things that I was sort of like not confident of. That, for example, I always like to keep my faders in 0, and I was always thinking, man, that's because I'm lazy. I was always trying to avoid doing automation, and I was always blaming myself, like, man, that's because I'm lazy. And I was kind of like going to sleep and thinking like, oh man, I'm a bad sound engineer because I'm like not making too much automation, like this sucks. And I mean, after meditating about this and seeing and reading this chapter, I was like, wait, but this guy also is seeking for a static fader situation. So either him and I are lazy, or this is something that many people do. So I think that it's good to argue that. Do you remember Ilya Masaev? Our thing was very different about this than me. Not than me, but than this conversation. Do you remember that? Do you remember that? Ilya was like, automate everything and do like very intense automation. I'm not saying that he's stupid or that he's wrong or something. No. I'm just saying, Mike Senior and I think Joe Barisi too, we all seek for this like static fader situation where we don't have to be jumping and moving things around. And a compressor helps you to do that. And so that's really cool, because now you after hearing this, like maybe next time when you start a mix from scratch, your algorithm will be a little bit different. Will be more like, I'm gonna make my static mix, and then I'm gonna hear. Once I make my static mix, I'm gonna hear across the song which elements disappear or stand out too much, and that should be your guiding decision to decide what should be compressed or not. And maybe later you would decide to make something more artistic and stylized. You know, we will see. All compressors have a level of control for specifying which signal are considered too loud, but the implementation of this control varies among different compressors. Короче, different compressors sound differently even at the same settings, and that's important to know and to use the right compressor for the right task. So now we're gonna see for a moment in this chapter, in this Mike Senior book, it goes into understanding first, like when you are facing a compressor, sometimes the threshold, kind of like definition of threshold, kind of like it's slightly modified. You sometimes see threshold, you sometimes see peak reduction, you sometimes see input gain. And these are three ways of seeing the name of threshold differently. And Mike Senior decides to talk about this just to clarify, you know, some things about this concept that may confuse people. So there are three common compressor control labels: threshold, peak reduction, and input gain. So the threshold control, we understand it very clearly. The peak reduction control, it's just like, it's a thing that it's kind of like ratio and threshold in one knob. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
When you are facing, I mean, right now I'm just like explaining three types of parameters that maybe you know all of these, maybe not. Anyways, I'm just going through it. Like when you see a compressor, there isn't a photo here, an example. When you see a compressor, it's a bad photo though, but this guy has it like the LA3A. It has like a peak reduction function, which is sort of like input and ratio at the same time. Like the more you will input more and increase the ratio, and increase, sorry, the threshold level, decrease the threshold level. And then another function that you have is the input gain, which would be like it's a situation when you have a fixed threshold and all you're doing is like hitting it harder by increasing the amount of signal that is going into the compressor. So the Mike Senior recommend newbies to start with input gate controls. So guys that have like input gain that have a fixed threshold, короче, to avoid overcompressing.
Leo, the question about input gain, is it possible to over amplify the signal that you
mean that you
направляешь into compression with gain control?
That you're clipping before?
I mean how it's work in the digital compressors with input gain. Can you over compress because the like original signal already has the level of gain, and what if you over gain this original signal with the input gain knob?
Yeah, you can fuck it up.
So
of course,
you can do it.
Of course.
And it will destroy the sound.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Of course. That's why I like. I mean, sometimes you can just put your compressor in 0 and check out, you know, at what level you are in 0. I'm talking about the ratio, like in 1:1, and just to look at your signal in the compressor without compression, just to see what's happening in the meters and stuff like. And also for this, you have the pre, post, and gain reduction meter. Let me have Pro Tools here ready to go. By the way, I hope that we don't lose the sound. Fuck, I regret having opened it now. You know, sometimes it goes crazy, but it's too late, guys. We cannot avoid it. So let's see. Tell me if the signal goes to hell or not. I think it shouldn't go to hell, but and I have my hard drive connected. Everything cool? No changes there? Yeah. I guess it's because I'm still in the sample rate, in the same sample rate, and that's why he didn't freak out. Let me change. I wanted to open a project that I have here because I wanted to discuss something. My hard drive, don't fall, hard drive. I'm so busy, guys. I'm so fucking busy. that I sent my family to Dutch. I was like, everybody get the fuck out of the house, and I'm alone. I'm just like working like a monster, man. I'm in a very, very, very brutal period of my life. So
You
I know
look
hear me.
good, by the way. Maybe it was good decision.
No, of course, I wouldn't make it, man. This week I teach 10 lectures, man. It's just insane. Yeah, wait. Music and Celados. No, and the main thing is the soundtrack, bros. Like I'm 2 days delayed with the first version of the soundtrack, and I have all my clients. I have them abandoned like for 3 weeks. Everybody's just like super angry at me right now. But whatever, shit happens. My family too, because I send them to Dutch. Do you hear well? No changes in sound.
No changes.
Great. I just wanted to load here quickly the LL3A. Let me grab the Universal Audio one. There is a Waves one too. So just to discuss your question a little bit, I think there is something we can talk about. Let me just use the search button. I always forget. LA 3. Yeah, here, like LA3A. Yeah, I think I have it. I'm just putting it in this kick. Yeah, see, peak reduction and gain. So this guy has, you see, like this guy has a fixed threshold. So when I increase the gain, I'm hitting that threshold more or less, and it has a knob that combines ratio and ratio. It would be combines ratio and output volume, I guess. Like, no, it actually is a combination of gain and threshold and ratio. It's kind of like lowering the threshold, so the threshold varies when you move the peak reduction. Now, what I really wanted to talk to you about here, I'm gonna put this on a snare. What I really wanted to talk to you about this is, oh shit. Well, I will not say it. Sounds nice, by the way. The drummer was really good, and we recorded this on DTH 8. And what I wanted to show you, bro, is like, here. Like, what am I monitoring? Wait, gain reduction? Wait. This particular compressor doesn't give me the chance. This compressor doesn't give me the chance to monitor that. But I can do it like this, you see? Like, I can put peak reduction in 0, so it means that the ratio would be in 1:1. And then kind of like see, like, when am I peaking, you see, like, that's kind of... Yeah, and then I can compress, you see what I mean? Like, but what I really wanted to show you was something kind of like, let me see the I don't want to search for this one. I want to search for the DBX. Let me see the DBX 160, because I wanted a very simple one where I can change. Yeah, you see, when I can change. This is extremely important when you're using a compressor, obviously. Like, so I mean, I can change the input gain. I can meter the input gain. Fuck. This compressor doesn't have a what's the name? An input gain knob. So I have output gain, but so I cannot answer your question with this compressor. Let me change to the next one. I think I can see it. I can see this with not the DBX. Let me try. I think the API 2500 is gonna give me this option. I have, like, you see, I have input gain. Where are we? This doesn't have input gain too, motherfucker. Let's go to 1176. I think 1176 is gonna give me that as well. 1176. Let's see, revision A. 1176. I have input gain, yes, and I have the chance to change. Wait, meter plus 8 plus 4. No, this doesn't. I want to have one that has an input knob and a change of meter. Let me change the watt 1176, because I know that one has it. The 1176. Let me see. So this one, the AE. No, it doesn't have it too. Do you understand what I'm looking for, right?
Yeah.
And do you understand this? Do I need to stop this, or do you want to see it? Because I mean, maybe it's just stupid that I'm wasting our time.
I just, what you want to say with this?
I want to show you how I meter a compressor when I'm using it. Like,
I can't understand what I understand what the difference, because not because I forgot the words.
Let me try to see it even in the distressor if it shows what I want. I don't think so. Wait. Right now I just cannot remember which compressor shows me this so clearly. No, in here I cannot change also I cannot change here what I'm metering, which sucks. In the distressor it's really easy to wreck the signal because you don't see the input, you don't see anything, you just see the gain reduction. And that's really possible, really easy to fuck it up. So anyways, it seems like I got stuck here a little bit and I don't want to do it. So I'm going to continue and we will come back later on a demonstration and we will see it. I'm sure it's going to appear later. I'm going to leave this project open there. Okay, so most compressors have gain control for level compensation. So I mean automatic gain, you know, there are these guys that have automatic gains and this can be dangerous for over compressing. So he recommends not to use automatic gain in his approach in general. And yeah, you need to understand threshold and makeup gain so you can operate a compressor properly. This is really cool idea here. You made your basic balance, you decided what you want to compress, and then you mute all channels and start reintroducing your channels again in the order of importance. I mean, you made your first balance, right? And then once you made your first balance, you mute them all, and then you start again, basically. And then you can start deciding, like you heard bass alone, and then you're like, ah, that's fine. And then you heard bass and guitar, and then you're like, when I hear bass and guitar together, I realize that the guitar stands out in this part. That could be an option for compression, and etc. It's just like we're trying to identify what to compress. And I mean, he discusses, I like to show you the examples that he uses, not the examples, but the gear that he proposes, because it's different than the one I propose. He is talking here about the Waves Renaissance compressor, which by the way, I talk about it, I really love it. And the Universal Audio 3A, we just saw it. And this, well, the Cubase vintage compressor for, we don't use Cubase, but he just discusses about them. So, Look, when mixing tracks, decide if each track needs to be compressed based on whether stable fader settings can be achieved. I don't know about you guys, but before I made this presentation, I didn't have like a true, strong guide on how to decide what I'm going to compress or not. I was just kind of going like, yeah, compress everything kind of thing. I'm joking a little bit, but we have, after this readout, we have some sort of like orientation of when it's recommended to do it. You have your basic stable faders, and when you lose control of your basic stable faders and you see yourself having to move them, that's a good candidate for compression. Of course, it can help you to when loud moments are too quiet or when quiet moments are too loud, obviously. That's obviously true. So even if you need very little work, of course, sometimes you need to compress just because of compressing, because there is a trend already, like vocals, for example, obviously. And rarely they would be mixed with a compressor. So, okay, that's too obvious to even discuss it. Which tracks need compression? So the decision to compress a track depends on whether it needs it or not, of course. And this is part of the process of mixing that requires critical listening and audio evaluation skills. I don't want you to go and compress everything. That's exactly what I mean. You just need to think about it and really decide if you need to compress it or not. And again, this test of the static faders is a good way, I don't know, to consider this. Compression is useful when loud moments. Yeah, this is just kind of stupid. Compression can help remedy the problems with unstable fader settings. I think that, I mean, for the future, because this is the first time I give this presentation, I'm kind of going to get rid of this because it's very clear to achieve good balance of instruments. In the real world, performance are always perfect. Compression can help for rust imperfections. This is boring. Poorly matched components in a drum kit. Poorly controlled resonance in guitar amplifiers. These are candidates for compression. Things in a drum kit that are like, for example, take A, take B situation. Like that's a candidate for compression when you're trying to put two takes together. Snare A, snare B, kick A, kick B. Poorly controlled resonance in guitars and amplifiers. Things that are out of control are candidates for compression. Room modes, sloppy MIDI programming is also a candidate for compression. Whenever somebody programs a MIDI track and they don't take care of all the velocities and they render you a track and then you have a track like that, these are candidates of compression. And poorly balanced synthesizers as well are, of course. How do you know that they're poorly balanced? Well, that's why I said that you need to start with having good critical listening skills. So I guess that compression often used on lead vocals, yeah. and lead vocals are always a good candidate. So
Leo, sorry,
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Do you have any positive thoughts about automation of faders?
I do have it, but I avoid it. The reason why I avoid
In the ideal world, when you will use the automation of volume or gain or
in client comments, bro.
sorry.
In client comments.
Okay.
Because you know why this happens, because, well, I mean, let's assume two scenarios. Okay, scenario A, I'm lazy. I don't wanna discard that scenario. Maybe it's because I'm lazy, but my logics in general is that I want to be able to jump from project A to project B really simply. Like, what I mean by this exactly, it's like sometimes you're mixing a four. This is really important, guys. Like, this is the moment when I really need your attention. Like, sometimes, for example, imagine that you mix 4 songs, and day one, like, I mean, imagine you mix first song and you send it out, and then you grab the same settings and you export them for song 2, right? I mean, I'm talking about an EP that was recorded consistently in the same album and stuff, blah blah, in the same studio. And then you go to song 2 and you will make improvements to it. And then you go to song 3 and let's think about the drums for a second. And you will make improvements to it as well. And when you reach to song 4, you have a better sounding drums that's song 1. And you want to be able to very easily jump between song 1 and song 4 and just import session data into it. And just be able to make a consistent situation in between all the songs. And if your automation is what drives your sound, you will suffer like hell.
Yeah.
That's why. Now, when we are in client's comments, that means that I already imported like settings of song 4 into song 1. I already have it all consistent. And then the client tells me, can you turn the right down a little bit here? Okay, well, I'm going to use automation there. That's a moment when I use automation. The second moment when I use automation, well, you will see, today we will discuss it, and I will start doing this more in my mixes, is automation of the threshold of the compressors. That would be a cool moment to start using automation. And the third moment when I really like to use automation is automation of the middle and side sent to the signal. You know, for example, to make sure that hi-hats are not so harsh in the whole mix and stuff like that. Yeah. So that's cool. Now, going down to Chinatown, it's just an expression in English about let's get deeper into something. So it's just like, this is how the books follows, like the first steps. So to choose a compressor, it's more important to understand, of course, how compressions work than the specific model. You know, like what I'm trying to say is like some people, well, not me, in this case, Mike Senior is trying to say is like some people choose their compressors just because I saw a tutorial, because I saw some YouTube video, and they really don't understand if it's really the right tool for the right job. So like it's important to know how compressors work better than to know a specific model. So he recommends to use one with input gain control, we discussed it, or with automatic gate compensation, or a gain reduction meter, like something that has one of these options, like the Ableton one, it's ideal, or the Pro Tools one native is ideal. Twisted threshold control to show at least 6 dB of compression on signal peaks, and then adjust the makeup gain. So we are making an update here in our numbers. I was always telling you go to 3 dBs, but now we're more grown-ups and we can go to 6 dBs. Like, I think that's a good number to be. Now let me show you something I also developed recently for the mixing. I started the mixing and mastering course for the DPO. That's why I have a whole bunch of like new materials here that I want to share with you quickly. But I want you, there has been so many things that I have covered since the last time we saw lectures together. And there is a couple of updates to things that I told you in the past and things that I learned to say better or to express better. And I want to add here one little detail that I discussed with the guys of DPO. Yeah, in the future I would like you to watch this video. It's gonna be in slide 20 of this presentation, and basically this is really important. Like 3 decibels double the pressure and 10 decibels double the loudness. I hope that you grasp this and to keep it close to your mind. You know, I put it right next to this slide so you know like that 6 dB movement, it's not necessarily Let me just put this here like and call it like how much is a 6 dB? Yeah, wait. But what does it means? What does it means to boost 6 dB something? 6 dB something. And I know this is obviously material that you already know, but I like how it's written here. It's just like 3 dBs double the pressure, 10 dBs double the loudness. That's important. That's very important for live sound. So when we're talking about 6 dBs, we are not doubling how loud something is yet. That's all I wanted to say. I have a little issue, guys. I really need to go to the toilet. I need to take 1 second break and I'll be right back, okay? Just give me 1 second.
No problem.
Yeah, sorry. Just give me 1 second. right, I'm back, guys. Sorry. Yeah, back to you. Thank you. So, yeah, let's continue. Okay, so we were. The first steps. Got it. I got it back. So first, it kind of like tells us to choose your compressor for the track that you want to compress. Doesn't matter which model really you're going to be using. Look compressor for input gain, and that's where we stop. Gain reduction meter, it's important. That's what I was looking for in that fucking... well, actually, not the gain reduction meter, because all of those compressors I was showing you have gain reduction meters, but I was looking for an input gain meter, and I couldn't find it. He proposes to use a compressor that I had never heard before. I just wrote it here for us to check it out. Like, there is the Gyro and Barry Bart PC2. I never heard this, or Tin Broke Tails. I never heard any of these compressors before. So he's proposing this as good starting points. I don't know. I just wrote there my recommendations, like Isotope Neutron, Native, Completon Labaton, Pro Tools Native, or Waves Renaissance, or HComp. Like, I mean, I think they're really good. Adjust the threshold control to achieve at least 6 dB compression on peak signals. This is a recommendation from Mike Senior. I'm showing it to you just so we calibrate what we do in comparison with another one. And use the makeup gain control to compensate for the level change that is happening because of the compressor. Obviously, use different monitor and systems to help to tweak the fader and determine if the track feels more stable on the mix. You want to be in a situation when you have a stable fader. Ha! Vindication. Great.
Sorry, Leo. This example with 6 dB compression on peaks, that what I said, because the 6 dB compression on peaks usually means for example, in the vocals, in the very dynamic vocals, that most of the material will be not compressed completely, or like compressed by 1 dB or like 2 dB. It's like nothing in comparison to what you want to see at the like master or mix.
Yeah,
like, you know.
But he's right now talking to you about achieving like what follows in the book is kind of like, okay, when do you use a limiter? Because here we're talking about compressors, and the questions that you're asking there are more about limiters. Like, this is more about the fine job of, like, I have a slap bass guitarist who is a sloppy guy, doesn't play well, and I want just to make sure that those peaks don't stand out so much. So we really are talking about different cases here. Do you feel what I mean?
So all these examples, it's with like ideal and perfect like instruments recordings, when 6 dB on peaks will be like 3 dB in the medium. Like, I mean, not the medium. Like the whole track, for example, in this example will be compressed too.
But this is like, he's talking about individual elements right now. He's not talking about the whole track.
Just only about the peaks?
He's only talking about like achieving a situation when you have static faders. Like, then later down the road we will discuss like compressing the whole mix. Like a
okay, sorry, I forgot about static faders.
No worries. Yeah.
I lost this.
And look, like,
point.
if compressor stabilize the fader, problem is solved. Like, I mean, again, I don't sell you this as the truth. It's just like, check this out. This is how one person thinks. So maybe we can think like that and we will save some time. And then he recommends, and I recommend this too, and I'm so happy. Like, this book kind of says all the things that I reached on my own mind, and the reason why I'm happy for that is just because I'm not crazy. That's all. I just was thinking maybe I'm stupid and I'm here talking bullshit and everybody's buying this bullshit, and I was really nervous about this a couple of years ago. But now I see, like, every time I compress, then I turn, like, imagine I decided I like this level of threshold, and then I kind of like pull it up a little bit just to compress a little bit less. When I decided that I like it, I kind of like return a little bit the work I did. So once you're done, try turning the threshold control back up a little bit to use less compression that you thought it was necessary. Yeah, and pushing the channel compressors too hard, it's a common mistake. You see, it's the channel compressors that he's talking about. So if the balance problem is still there, try rolling the threshold down further until you're in, maybe you need to compress more than 6 dBs. That's another way of seeing it. And different threshold settings may this is important. Different threshold settings may suit different segments of the track, so automating the threshold can be an important part of the job instead of automating the actual output of the whole thing. If heavy compression causes unwanted effects, try switching to a different type of compressor or a different preset, and they will respond differently to different settings, like we said several times today, and compare options to see what does the best job. And yeah, you will have your favorites after a while of working, obviously. So concentrate on the balance of the mix first and try compression later. That's consistent to what Joe Barresi said and what we have been saying today several times. Like, we want to be in a situation when we have already sort of a balanced mix and then we start compressing. I kind of like repeating myself here. Like I told you, I'm trying like a new way of doing the presentations, and I'm getting some help from some people because I have too much stuff. So I'm getting some help to summarize the book. So consider, and this is the first lecture of this type that I give, so sorry if it's a bit sketchy. Consider other processing options before compromising on the compressor. So if a static failure position can't be found, yeah, I got it. Now I understand. Sorry. Let's say that you tried and tried and tried and tried. Well, maybe compressor was not the way to fix that problem. Like, of course. Let's just close this. A compromise between dodgy balance and non-musical processing side effects is also settled on this situation. Like, I mean, you will have to make a decision between a bad balance and unmusical processing, depending on what is more important for you. But you need to know what the problem is. Compression may not be the answer. If you already tried different compressors, other type of processing may be useful. So I already said that I'm going to get rid of this. Now, here is a part of the lecture when we're going to discuss different types of compressors. So, of course, we know that there is FET. Let me just start here. Optical, FET, VCA, and variable AMU. These are the main ones that usually are around. When we talk about FET compressors, we are talking about compressors that used something called a field electric transistor. And they have, what you need to know, really, and in these slides I hope will be useful to you for the future, is like they're the fastest ones. And that's what I was going to say, Bradan, about using the wrong compressor, like what I was saying before about using the wrong compressor for a certain task. Like, like maybe, you see, maybe other compressors are not as fast and then they become more artifacty that they should be. Or maybe you didn't need such a fast compressor for something that it doesn't move so fast, etc. Like, these are difficult things to calibrate and to balance. FET compressors use field transistor to apply compression and have faster attack time and harder knee than optical and variable mu. So FET compressors are better for things that are very chirurgical, like, and very fast, you know, that they require to be really quick. I guess that the 1176 is a great example, but we'll see there are a whole bunch more in the end. They tend to have faster attack time, give a punchy tone and sound, and they work great from drums, vocals, and guitars. There is a case, the Yuri 1176. That Yuri sounds like Yuri, like our Yuri guy from DTH, but it's not Yuri. It's another one. It's a great example. It has a very fast attack and release times, and it's also colored the sounds very well. So, FET, fast, FET colors a lot. FET, I would say punchy, like that. VCAs,
sorry, what the example of usage of FET?
Like I mean, everywhere you would use an 1176 for. So an 1176 is a classic case of it. Let's go to Pro Tools. This is the moment where I wanted to have Pro Tools here. Like a great case for this would be a snare. Would be also parallel compression for the whole drums. I guess that it's not a good one for a bass guitar or something, or a bass synth. Or something like that. It's not so good for that.
So actually it's a fast peak peaks compression, yeah?
Yes,
Thank you.
yes. 1176, let me see the 1176 here, like we were seeing it a minute ago. Yeah, this is great for snare. Let me use yeah, and what am I seeing here? I'm seeing the gain reduction. So I'm kind of like 5 dBs in. Yeah, these guys, by the way, they're the other way around. Like 7 is faster than 1 for some reason. But it's how it is. Well, anyways, you know these guys very well. I think so. That's what I'm thinking because you have seen this in the past. The VCA compression uses high voltage control amplifiers. It's a different technique. One is like, I mean, I really don't know what a field effect transistor is, obviously. I wish I would know that. I can research it, but... And this one uses voltage control amplifiers to apply compression, and they are more transparent and more precise. So, FET, not clean, colored. VCA, more clean, more... I said the word transparent when I talked about FET, and that was a mistake. I think the best way to see it is like fast and colored. VCA, usual speed and transparent. That's why the SSLG series ends up being in most of mix buses, because it's a VCA compressor. It gives you a lot of gain reduction, but it kind of does it in a way that it's not so artifacty, and it's good for taming intense peaks in a track, for example. And yeah, this is the SSL G series is a great case. And I think, yeah, I mean, about VCA compressors, that's kind of like what I can share with you at the moment. And then optical compressors, they use a photocell to apply compression, and they are really natural and smooth, and they are very musical as well, so they're really cool. But they are more like an RMS, you see, like they're more like an RMS-y type of thing. So optical compressors are better for basses, guitars, for electric guitars if you're gonna compress them, for vocals too. They're great, things that are not so picky. So, by the way, let me just like I want to make like a summary here when we finish, like, so we have a summary of this, so that would be quite useful, I think. Summary. So we have one slide that brings the whole thing together, like FET equals colored, fast, I would say with character, and let's think about something else later. Then we have VCA, we have transparent, for transparent deep gain reduction, not so artifacty. Also, well, I'm inventing that word, but yeah, and then we will continue in a second. And then I'm gonna put optical, so we put like more for RMS content. That's really important and useful commentary, I think. And you know, I didn't know this until I made this presentation, and I remember that I was always hearing like optical compressors are great for bass. Optical compressors are great for bass, and that makes sense now. And then we will see about the variable mu. And I guess we can put an example there, but we have the examples right here. So, okay, let's go. Let me see something. The LA2A is an optical compressor. That's a really cool one. Like smooth, I would add this here. It's a smooth one, the optical one, more for RMS content. Smooth. So when you need to compress something, but you need it to be not so obvious, like an optical compressor can be an option. Average signal, yeah, I think that's all. And the variable mu, they are the ones that we consider like the vintage cool ones, like the tube ones, the most color and crazy ones. Like those are the variable mu. So tone, and they have noticeable tone and warmth. They usually work with tubes. Wait, variable mu. So tone and warmth usually work with tubes. Artifact, not so artifactful. I guess I better to put it like that. Usually work with tubes. The variable mu's. They have a soft knee. So I would say that, yeah, that's because they're so smooth, of course. They have a slower attack times. So I would say like slower as well. Slower. And yeah, I think I can get rid of this. Slower. Good for vocal recordings. Yeah, a great example is like the classic ones, like the TubeTech CL, the Fairchild 670, the variable MU, like they are classic ones. So which ones are better? Like I put you a list here, like the LA2A, the LA3A, the TubeTech CL B. And I put you here stuff that are good for, like bass, Vox, guitars, FET, for example, the 1176, so it's ultra fast attack, release, very colored, not transparent. BCA, like SSLG Plus, NIF, mix, boss, and mastering guys. And variable LMU, like Fairchild, Manley, TGI, Chandler, very rich in color, make things sound fat. So that's kind of like a conversation about compressors in general. This slide, you have seen it from me before. I just put it here just for a refresher. Like I mean about multiband compressors and variable EQs and dynamic EQs and good multiband compressors that I recommend. We have discussed this in the past, so I'm not going to talk about this so much. But I rewrote the slide because I never thought that the difference between a multiband compressor and dynamic equalizer, I don't feel that we established that difference very clearly between us. Like, and I wanted to discuss this once more. I remember we discussed this many years ago. I have discussed it with many people, and I didn't like how I was delivering it. So I took the time to kind of like rethink about this and discuss the differences one last time about a multiband compressor and an equalizer. And I think today I got it clear. Look at what I had told you before. I mean, obviously, I just ask you just in case. I don't need to talk to you about multiband compressors, right? You already know about them.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. We discussed once that the difference between multiband EQs and dynamic EQs and multiband compressors was like, one of the difference was like multiband compressors work with bands. And the other thing I said is like, there is a different way of how they apply gain reduction. But I didn't like how I explained it, and I found a better resource to explain it. So, I'm going to tell you what I said before. Multiband compressors manipulate the signal based on a proportional value that's determined by the threshold. Dynamic EQs use something called pure level. These two standards sound different. Gain moves are more transparent. This is why multiband compressor adds sonic character. But you see, I said something there, but I kind of didn't explain what is gain level and what does it means. And I had a better resource for this, and so I want to touch this today in this advanced compressor lecture. Both multiband compressor and dynamic equalizer are processor tools to shape tonal balance of recording, obviously. Multiband compressor divides audio signals into multiple frequency bands and apply compression independently to each band. So it treats the band as a whole. This is really important. It treats the band as a whole. Now, the dynamic EQ is just looking at the frequency that you chose to reduce. And then the reduction applies to whatever is under the Q, under the bell, depending on your steepness of your Q. That's different. That's very different. That's kind of like, imagine, that's a good metaphor, and it's a bit abstract, but I hope that you get it. Imagine, I'm going to make a drawing here. MS. I'm gonna use MS Paint online. There is like a emulator of MS Paint online, because I saw that you used Paint before. So wait, Paint. So let me just like go to that famous program, like here, Microsoft Paint online. Yeah, I wanted to say this. Imagine, yeah, and this is the old school, man.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
so
one.
Imagine something. Imagine a system. Imagine two systems. We have a situation in which we have a system that it's kind of like, it consists of a hydraulic press, okay? This is very strange example that I'm making. But we have a hydraulic press. And then we have some water under here. We have some water over here. And depending, let's say that there is like this thing has a measure, like a system that is measuring the pressure in each one of the points of this dynamic press. I'm just gonna put these are what's the name? sensors that sensor the pressure of water that is arriving to the dynamic press at a certain level of time. And then the system is deciding to go down and to compress this water, to push it down, depending on the result of the analysis of all of these points. Now imagine a different case. That would be a multiband compressor. Now imagine a different case in which you have this situation. You have the same dynamic hydraulic press, but the detector is only in the center. Yeah, I got it. That's the difference. We have explained it successfully. And then whatever the dynamic press is going to do will affect all this bunch of water here. But the amount of force is going to apply. It will be depending on one single point of information. And then the rest is kind of like coincidentally affected too. Yeah. Fuck yeah. That's it. I'm gonna put this image. It was clear, right? Like, I mean, I think it was a great explanation, but yeah, great. I'm just here kind of celebrating my own work, so whatever. That's not so cool, but anyways, I'm really happy that I could reach this explanation, because I was always trying to explain it, and this idea just came to my mind, and that's cool. Okay, so I want to jokingly use this same image. I'm gonna screenshot it, and I will use it in the future. Just give me a second.
So actually, those two types, like multiband compressors and dynamic EQs, is kind of same, but the EQs you will use for more surgical things.
Yes, for more
because
precision.
Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
because they are just looking at one single frequency.
Yeah.
And the other one is more like looking at a band and then decided what to do based on the band. Yeah, let me just draw this like this, and I will take this image and just for fun, I'm gonna put it in the presentation. I'll use it in the future. So let me just reduce this image and insert from the desktop. Up. I love this. So it feels like Sirius was explaining to somebody how the compressor works. So let me just chop this here, and that's all. Okay, cool, super. All right, that's one thing. That's done. Now look at this. You see like how it's written formally. It's like multiband compressor control dynamics of individual frequency and ranges. Like that's what I mean about a range. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 detectors, while dynamic equalizer adjusts level on specific frequencies. That's it. Like that's the difference mainly, and that produces a more musical result from the side of the multiband compressor. So that's really cool. So we have a couple of slides left to go. Kind of like thinking more deep about compression settings. So if we understand those parameters, of course, we will be able to change the dynamic range better. We need to learn about how compression controls work, so we can set them up better from scratch. That's obvious. Compressors usually do more than just reduce gain. They of course change the tone of process signals, so it's useful to be able to tweak the gain reduction manually, because compressors are doing more than what we think. I mean, there is also the circuitry. Yesterday, in that case, when we see this lecture of mastering that I want to give you, in that case of that particular work that I was showing to you about Billie Eilish, the engineer runs the signal through a compressor without even using the compressor. He just like wants to use the transformers or something like that. So we need to get to know this equipment, or this software as well, because maybe the thing is doing more than what we think is doing. Even though we're trying to compress little, maybe it's like squashing the signal a little bit. And this all connects to your first question, Bratan, all of these. I think that the main point of this lecture is that all of us, including myself, we use the wrong compressor for the particular task. And I was always kind of like waiting until I had the time to analyze this with more calmness, like now. And now I'm going to be very more careful about which compressors I precisely use where. And I think that will help me to get a better result. Be able to switch between different characterful compressors to find the best that enhances what you need to do. So, I mean, the part of the lecture is more like, how do we, okay, now that we know all of this, how do we get better? Well, always studying what the parameters are doing is important. Understanding that all compressors are different is important. and also maybe understanding using different compressors for different parts of songs is important. And yeah, I mean, we can adapt to better tasks if we do it. So there is a case here of a slap bass example. So, I mean, here we're going to be discussing only the ratio parameter because we already discussed the threshold parameter before. So let's say that we have a slap bass and we want to process the slap bass. So the Mike Senior makes a joke in the book, which is like, let's say that you have a bad slapper. How do you fix it? And so the best processing for this is the mute button. He's saying, like, I mean, he's kind of joking there, but let me just put it in orange just to put like a joke here. Now let's say that you have this problem.
Slap bass haters here.
Yeah. I think that Davide 504 will be very offended with this. He will make a full video about this. So let's say that you have this problem that signal peaks are coming. You're finding yourself like turning them down a lot and stuff. That's pretty obvious, and we have seen this use case together. Use a compressor to reduce the amount of signal level that exceeds the threshold level. So set the threshold level above the level of the majority of the bass part. So you see, like, I mean, this is really useful, and that's why I put the image right there. Like, we had this problem of these peaks from the slapper coming, and we're gonna put the threshold exactly where all the rest of the other elements of the signal are. So we are only gonna catch that peak, and then we're gonna compress this with a high ratio. And the reason why we care about the fact that I mean, what I'm trying to say with this is like, we want to feel comfortable to use a high ratio in some situations like this one. For this, the threshold needs to be barely touching the rest of the signal, so you don't overcompress the rest of the signal. You only want to compress those peaks. That's what I'm trying to say. So high ratios will be really useful, but you need to be careful with the not overcompressing the rest of the signal by putting the threshold too low. Yeah, and that's kind of like a basic case of a bass slap. Of course, now what type of compressor would you use here? Now that we discussed this, just curious. Opto?
VCA or FET.
Exactly. VCA or FET. Like, I would maybe, I may have been tried, like I have never seen myself trying to do this with distressor, which the distressor can get into opto. The distressor has, we have discussed this in the past, it has its own kind of like category. It can act as opto in a certain point, but it's not an opto compressor or a FET or a variable MU. It's just a little bit different. But for example, maybe I have been in a situation when I'm working with the neutron compressor trying to catch some peaks, and maybe I'm coming from a prior settings that I had before and it was in opto and I left it, you know. And I think that that's where a lot of my mistakes are made, in not using the proper tools for the proper task. So anyways, there is another case here of an acoustic guitar that Mike Senior discusses. So it's like, okay, you have an acoustic guitar that give me just a second. Yeah, you're having a problem to kind of like give a consistent feeling to the whole guitar. So you can obviously use the compressor to kind of like pack more info in each one of the dBs that you're trying to present into your mix, and to squash the dynamic range. So for example, in here it's somewhere that you want to have a lower ratio, but a threshold that is more closer to the center to the average of the signal. So I would go for a like 3:1 ratio, something like that, but with a lower threshold. So you have a couple of options here. Like, you have an uneven acoustic guitar and you can use a low ratio compression with a low threshold, or you can have a high ratio compression with a high threshold. So these are two ways of getting there, to getting to somewhere where your acoustic guitar will sit more comfortably in the mix. Either low threshold, high ratio, either high threshold, low high ratio. So yeah. Other thoughts about the ratio that Mike Senior discusses in the book. Ratio control allows compressor to cope with different compression settings. So low ratio settings like 1.5 to 1 It's just like for very politely touching something, so can be useful when you want to do super tonky stuff, and also in mastering if you need to do some tonky stuff in mastering. A high ratio setting 12:1 will be really good at, I don't know, like things that are just like destroying your dynamic range. Let me just rewrite this in a different way. The bit overshoots heavy peaks, and the infinity to 1, it's just like stop things forever forever and harshly. I mean, the reason why I care about this, I think I would change this to be more like 2:1, something like that. It's like, hey, you want to be soft, 2:1. You want to be heavy, 12:1. You want to be brutal, infinity to 1. But this 12:1, the last time I mentioned it to you, I had said something like 6:1. So I'm kind of like calibrating my numbers and giving you higher numbers because we're more serious people now and we can feel more comfortable about it. It's important to have a gain reduction meter, of course, to see how much compression is happening and when it's working. And I think it's important to maxing out the ratio control. So because this can, I mean, if you if you use your full on ratio, this can help you to flat some things out, but it can also be careful. Let me rephrase this. I said it really wrong. You have to be careful when you use your maximum ratio settings and put your threshold in the right place, because you can suck the life out of your things, obviously. So using low ratios to get balancing done is maybe not a bad idea, but anyways. So this is the basic kind of conversation that Jason Corey, the Mike Senior gave us about compression. What we're gonna see next week is when do we use like limiters versus compressors, in what are the cases where we need them, and we're gonna see also stuff like compressing the mix bus in relationship to compressing individual elements, and more advanced compression techniques. So yeah, I mean, maybe perhaps our lecture is a couple of minutes shorter than usual today, but that's kind of where I got us so far.
Yeah, thank you. It's not shorter,
Yeah.
over 5 minutes actually.
Right. No, but I was in the toilet for 5 minutes. I read all of
okay.
these things, bro. I'm very careful about this. So anyways, I hope that this was useful in some form, just to think about compressors from another angle, and I'm happy that we're back to our theoretical lectures. I'm actually happy that I have some help now. I can breathe a little bit. Sorry if I make some mistakes and stuff, but I have an immense workload and I need to manage it somehow. So yeah, it's just coming along slowly. So any questions or comments or ideas, feelings, thoughts? How is it all going to you? The course is great. The course is bad. How is it all going?